Hey everybody, it's Bruno. If you want to be our next guest on AndB, click on the Be My Next Guest link below. Hope you enjoy this episode, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
That's right. What's up, you sucker? That's right. What's up, you sucker?
All right, everybody, it's Bruno again on AndB, and I'm back here with my good friend Srecko Zizakovic. Just call him Z.
Yeah,
So basically, our show is Z and B. That's not too bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah. So
Got some.
let's get after this. Close more deals. A lot of people know you as a former Stampeder, former Ohio State great. We're going to touch on that in a minute. So, but the last 387 years since you played, pretty close. Experienced sales manager, pushing to get more sales all the time, getting better. How do you close more deals, as the caption says? Number one.
I would say for any sales out there is execute on promises, right? Lots of times you have an initial conversation with a customer or a group of customers or a procurement team. You tout what it is that you're trying to promote. You talk about price, delivery, and ultimately it ends up coming down to execution, right? So the ability to execute on the promises that you talked about. The old, hey, you know what? I'll email you something when I get back to the office, or I'll give you a call on Friday. We'll set up this, or we'll do this, that, and the other, right? And the ability to get caught up in a lot of other things in life. And, lots of times I'm in a meeting and your phone's no different, right? Buzz, 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 buzz. And you're like, oh man. So I'm going to walk out of this meeting. I made these promises. And by the time I get to my vehicle or by the time I get back to my office, unless I've acted upon actually writing that stuff down or even noting it in my Outlook, in my calendar or something like that, it's easy to get caught up in those other 4 phone calls that I got while I was in this one meeting, right? So the ability to execute, that's what a customer is waiting for, right?
So that's number one, to close more deals. Yeah, I got my phone here because just in case somebody calls me to close a deal. That's the only reason I got it on here. And people thought maybe, it was a Stanley garage door opener to get me out of this meeting pretty quick. But it's interesting because, we joke around, it can't all be serious, but talking about delivering on a promise, I'm sure you remember this story because you lived it, but I remember you always promising a very big Hollywood star. You told me this story about you and Lubo, your brother, about somebody that kind of needed your help when they were in Calgary and they got their ass cut with the Stampeders. Why don't you tell that story?
Yeah, the infamous.
Because you delivered on that promise.
The infamous Dwayne Johnson, right? To this day, I can't tell you how many people come up to me and go, hey, did The Rock, were you here when The Rock was here, when he played? And they like, there's none of this, well, he didn't really play. He's a super guy. Like, don't get me wrong. And much like in the last episode.
Whoa. I thought you were pointing to me to say I couldn't play.
No.
Okay. That's good. That's good.
But much like in the last segment where we talked a little bit about Cuba Gooding Jr., right? Dwayne's the same, right? Like, what you see is what you get. Right. So a big kind of goofy, funny guy, right? That can act and be serious and do all that stuff. And he, a big, strong kid, like holy mackerel. He had huge arms and big quads, but just he was not polished enough to crack our lineup. And in his book, The Rock, ironically enough, he doesn't really mention a lot of names, but he kind of categorizes Calgary as his dark days.
Yeah.
And let's face it, like some people, like I've said it to some of my friends, some people have to hit rock bottom in order to bounce off of something and start heading up in the other direction, right? And that was him, right? He had like whatever it was, $7 or whatever that number was of change in his pocket when he flew back home. And but that was his motivation, was, I can't do this anymore. But it's the old beat up blue pickup truck, that was my brother's pickup truck that he used with Brian Wiggins and Will Moore and Terry Vaughn, I think were his other 3 roommates, because they all shared a 2-bedroom apartment, but they needed a pickup truck because they were driving around, the alleyways of some of the hotels at Motel Village to pick up discarded mattresses because they couldn't afford to buy them, right? And and my brother and I had invited Dwayne.
In that pickup, did they maintain 6-foot distance for social distancing? Is there any room for?
Dude, 1994, man. 1994.
Well, these guys are like 6'19". Like your brother's what, 6'44"? Like how tall is he?
6'8".
Oh my God, Lou was a big dude.
Yeah,
but you're tall too.
No, he was lent from the truck. He was a beater, right? We used to call it the Bluebird, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, I was quite amazed that he made it from Toronto with that truck. But it got here, right? And it ran. You couldn't kill it. So he's like, yeah, sure, here, Dwayne, take the keys, right? Go do what you got to do. And he would take them and go find these mattresses and do whatever. But we knew they were in a tough spot financially as guys who were on a practice roster. And typically what would happen is the guys at the position would take somebody on practice roster and say, hey, come over to my place for dinner, right? And we did that a number of times with Dwayne. And if we're gonna make food for me and my brother, there's clearly gonna be enough for one more mouth, right? Like it's no big deal, right? And then as soon as some of our female friends that we knew realized that we knew Dwayne Johnson, hey, we'll cook dinner for you guys. Why don't you come to our house? You know what I mean? And I'm like, all right, I get a free meal and somebody else gets to do the dishes and the cooking. That's awesome. All I can do is bring Dwayne. Hey, Dwayne, you want to come for a free meal? Like, is the guy to say no? Come on, right? Yeah. So
at this point, he was just a good-looking guy.
He was a good-looking guy. He worked hard.
But he wasn't The Rock.
No, he wasn't The Rock. He wasn't The Rock. But I do remember at the old stadium, Mr. Sub. If you remember, over where the Wendy's and the keg is, right? Mm-hmm. It's burned down since. Right?
Do you think he had anything to do with that?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
It was no.
Just looking for an angle.
It was no Stone Cold Steve Austin retribution match there that went out of control. But anyway, he comes out of there, and I remember we had just let loose because we were heading into the playoffs, and so we didn't need all the practice roster guys. Mm. And I remember asking him because I'd stopped by there after practice to grab a sub there before going to work out later, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, Dwayne, so you're heading back home? Like, what do you got planned?" Because I knew he had a rough time. And he goes, "Well, I think I'm going to get into wrestling." And I didn't, I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, this is Calgary. Stu Hart, the Hart Foundation, Hart family. Like, I'm like, the first thing I said was, did you talk to Patty, your trainer? He knows that Hart family like nobody's business, right? Like, you need somebody to help you get in. Like, there's a path, right? And he was nowhere near as charismatic as he was once he became The Rock, right? Yeah. Like, let's be very honest about that. But he said, "No, I think I'll be okay." And I'm like, "Okay, you want to do it all yourself? I guess that's okay." And he goes, "No, just to let you know, like, well, my dad was Rocky Johnson, and the Headhunters were uncles of mine, and so was Jimmy Superfly Snuka." And I looked at him and I went, "Yeah, you'll do okay."
Yeah, no kidding.
And he did more than okay.
Yeah, because Rocky Johnson, I'm not sure, but I think he was born Canadian.
He could be.
I'm not sure.
He could be. You'd have to look it up. Yeah. But I remember seeing him at Maple Leaf Gardens for Maple Leaf Wrestling.
Well, for sure, because he was with Billy Red Lions and all those guys.
Yeah.
I was like one. Let's throw that out. Because you are from Toronto area.
Absolutely,
right?
Man.
You're from Weston.
Weston, yeah. Just out by the airport. Yep.
See, in between those drinks, I remember some of the stuff you told me on the road. So yeah, that's kind of the Rock story. I remember you telling us, and we're like, "No way!" And I'm like, "Dude, yeah, we used to get, me and Lubo used to try to help him out a little bit, but he was down to his last $7. Now he's like still a 7, but it's $7 billion.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
He owns a football league now.
Yeah,
you think he would have made that league if he owned the league?
I don't know that he would have wanted to play if he owned the league.
The XFL's in the wrong days, but
no, but you can see his passion for football, right? Like
he played at Florida State, right?
No, he played at University of Miami.
Oh, Miami. I'm sorry, the Hurricanes, right?
Yeah. So he played behind
Florida.
Yeah, he played behind some great players, which
Did
is
he
one of the reasons.
Play with Ziggy Marley?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because he came to the Ottawa Rough Riders.
Yeah.
He was a middle linebacker, undersized, but.
Yeah, but he played behind Warren Sapp.
Right.
And Warren Sapp was an all-pro, right? Like it was tough. I actually watched some old films, some U of M films, and
that's right.
and he made some good plays. Like he's a pretty good player. I take nothing away from him, but you played behind a perennial all-star, right? And no different than Harold Hasselbeck, who is chiseled like a Greek god, right? When he showed up here in Calgary, and you realize, man, you weren't even a starter. And he played behind like Dennis Brown, who's an All-American at University of Washington. And it's just unfortunate, but it's numbers, and that's just the way it played out, right?
And just to be clear, because I'm very, very defensive of my good friends like you, because you've always been an incredible friend to me. Take nothing away from The Rock. He did not get the starting part like you did in Rat Race. In the movie, we talked about that last time.
No, he didn't.
Cuba picked you, brother.
Well, The Rock was also
just go along with the story.
The Rock was also down in Florida doing his WW, back then it was still WWF training camps, right? I think they were in Tampa, I want to say, or Tampa and Orlando, one of those two places. And I remember the first time he was on TV fighting. My brother calls me up because my brother was in, I want to say he was in Toronto. Yeah, because he was back out east working. And he calls me up and he goes, dude, turn on TSN right now. I'm like, why? Dwayne's on. I said, really? Come on. And you get on there and I'm like, and I just started laughing. But it wasn't because it was disrespectful or funny, but I was just so amazed that here's a guy who had nothing. Didn't have two nickels to rub together, 3 or 4 years earlier, and here he is. And you can just see that if he cut loose and he developed his persona, man, he's going to be good. And then he just kept getting better and getting better. And, the one-liners, all you jabronis out there, you're just like, oh, God, that's funny. Like, where did you come up with jabronis? Come on, man.
Well, he was like second generation, third. Like Peter Maivia, I think, was his uncle. And he was a he was a big-time wrestler in the WWE. Yeah. How do I know this? Is because most of my family grew up in the Bronx. And that's New York City, Bronx, right at the cusp. That's where Vincent McMahon Sr. started, basically like Stu Hart did out here. So it was just like a carnival act. Yep. And I think Chief Peter Maivia was there. And so I mean, you're a lot bigger than I am. And people your size, your strength, your athleticism, I'm not being funny. Did you ever think of wrestling?
My brother and I joked about it for like 30 seconds. We were going to become...
Your brother could have been like the Undertaker. Like, he's tall.
Oh,
man.
yeah. Like
you're tall. What are you, 6'5"?
6'5". But, I played at 265. My brother was at 275. Of course, he's a little more stretched out, but, still...
Well, he could pull a wrestler,
size. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we were joking around going, we should become we call ourselves the Serbian Nightmares. You know what I mean? And we'd have a shtick or whatever. But come on. Like, the Bushwhackers, right? Like those guys made me laugh. I thought they were awesome, right? Like
they're big boys,
great characters, right? Yeah, but the people that they played, I thought were awesome, right? Like they were pretty damn funny.
So did you ever think of doing it? Like seriously?
No, not seriously. You know why? Because my body was already beat up, right?
Right.
And so Dwayne had the luxury of
not getting
the crap beat out of him for 6, 7, 8 years playing pro football. But more importantly, I think the roles that he took on in the WWF and the WWE subsequently were, he made his mark with his attitude and his persona and the raised eyebrow, right? Can you smell what the Rock is cooking, right? Like, and the one-liners, right? That's what got people super excited. And he would do his moves and everything. I'm not saying he wasn't athletic, but he wasn't a guy who had to go out there and slam his body every single night, right? And just and take on the pain and the painkillers and all the negative stuff that kind of follows wrestling, right?
It wasn't roughhouse. I mean, taking nothing away from the physicality, and I'm sure he was coached in by his dads. Like, you don't want to be flying off the third rope every single time. But I do want to go down another sports thing. We're going to get to the other tip because you are a seasoned salesperson, but it's really hard. Hey, I told you my show is, you can't all be serious.
That's right.
But something, we'll get back to that. But another famous, I think maybe the most famous football player you played with was maybe Doug Flutie, or one of.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very successful. The reason why I bring up Doug Flutie is I had the opportunity to meet him, I think, once or twice, just casually. But you hear this on NB only. Z was in a rock band with him, and you played the accordion.
Well, no, I still play the accordion because my dad forced me when I was 5 years old.
Great
but no, I played bass.
You played bass?
I learned how to play the bass.
But they tuned you out until you played the accordion because you're the squeeze player.
They couldn't handle my heavy metal accordion. But
you still play?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some country songs like buddies of mine like Dan Wicklum, with Winnipeg and Calgary, and then had a fantastic career with COSIA here in town in Calgary, Canadian Oil Sands Innovation Alliance, Darcy Kopp, who coached at Bishop Carroll for a long time, and a couple of their UFC buddies, Colin Sheedy, another gentleman who worked at Husky who played football with Darcy. We were all kind of good at playing different instruments, and I had learned how to pick up the bass, and I played the bass because accordion, well, bass is really simple compared to trying to figure out a squeeze box that you can't see your one hand, right?
I can't even pick one up. You ever see my max bench, the 0? Yeah. I got to pick this thing up, walk around with it. Are you kidding me?
So we had lots of fun, and one evening.
So Doug played
for talent. He was a drummer.
He was a drummer, and his brother Darren was a guitarist.
Was a guitarist.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I had a chance because my daughter plays in a rather humongous lacrosse showcase tournament in Orlando the last 3 or 4 years, and I've gone with her, not last year, but the 3 before. And Doug is in Florida, so I just gave him a call and said, hey, you know what? I'll take an extra day and take the rental car, and I'll drive out and see you, right? And just catch up, right? Because how often do I get to Florida? Except for this tournament, right? So I would catch up with him, and it was awesome to just reminisce and tell some stories and see that he's doing well. And but he brings me into his little music room, right? So he's got all his guitars and he's got his signed stuff. He's, of course, he's buddies with Bon Jovi and a few of the other.
Is he a rock star?
You might have heard of him. If you Google him, you might. I think he put out a song. But anyway. So Doug's got all this stuff, and he's got his drums set up and guitars and blah. And of course, once you start talking music, and this is the interesting thing about Doug, and I love Doug. But when people are like, "Well, what's he like? And I'm like, "Well, he's going to talk about 3 things. He's going to talk about family. He's going to talk about sports. Doesn't matter what sport,
right?
Because he's super competitive, and he's going to talk about music. And really, when he was in Calgary, if you didn't land on a topic that was one of those 3, he didn't have time for you. Like he wasn't going to talk politics. He wasn't going to talk economics. He wasn't going to talk about existential stuff. He's going to talk about those 3 things because those are the 3 things that really mattered in his life. And I can respect him for it, right?
Right.
But it was great to catch up. And every time that we went to Florida for that tournament, I'd call him up and say, hey, I'm going to be in town. Are you going to be in town? Yeah, okay, shit. I'll meet you out at Cocoa Beach, right? And we'd catch up and we'd grab a lunch. And it's funny, to this day, people walk up in the bar and be like, are you Doug Flutie? Can I get an autograph? Right? And he takes it with a smile every single time. And why wouldn't you, right? But he's so well known. And Doug, for sure, is one of many great people. And he's a great person, but he's a great football player. But there's lots of great people that didn't end up being great football players, but were good football players. But it was a way to bring, like in college, 110 people together in one shot. Every year you had 110 buddies, right? And that changed a little bit every single year, right? And it got you used to meeting different people from different backgrounds, from different parts of the country, different philosophies mentally on sports and how they approach things. And it really diversified you within your own personality, right? It taught you to be flexible with lots of different situations and people and conversations and stuff like that. But if you want to talk about just great football players, I mean, the 2 Chris's that I played with, Chris Carter and Chris Spielman at Ohio State. I mean, both all pros. I know Chris is in the Hall of Fame. Like, the guy's just a stud. The catches I saw him make were ridiculous.
Yeah, they were
Just ridiculous.
Well, I'm going to kind of pause this because you're going into Ohio State, and I really believe that, yes, it's kind of a sales video, but people want to hear your story. And those who don't know your story, that is what makes you great in the business world, okay? Is the utmost respect that people have for you. And for those out of town, we're filming this in Calgary, so Srecko did play for the Calgary Stampeders. There's very few people in the Stampeder world that don't know who you are. But this is something that I want to share with the normal folk out there that don't know Shrek, okay? Or the underprivileged that don't know you.
I was the original Shrek.
You're the original Shrek, that's right.
Disney.
I am not going to call Kim Fiona. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
No.
But there's something that when I first met you, the one thing that I really appreciated about Srecko is your authenticity, and they're not bullshitting, is it didn't matter, all these guys, hanging out with The Rock, all these guys, but if you sat at a table with myself, who I'm kind of an under the radar guy until we started doing this because people asked, anyways, we started doing these things. I was always under the radar. I'm very happy being under the radar. You would not pick up and go talk to the popular people until you're here with us. And I remember, because it doesn't matter about my background here, but I really appreciated that. And I know a couple of my buddies that we hung out with really appreciated that about you, because you are a very popular person. So we were on a bus ride once when we were coaching. Are you ready?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
How
No,
bad
this
is it
is a
gonna get?
complimentary, because this
Okay.
is Ohio State story. And we're driving. This is like the internet. Like, we were born in 1914.
Yeah.
Boy, that first plague was tough. But we're on. I don't even know where we were going. We're driving, and Googling on the internet. It wasn't even Google. It was even out. I don't think it was like just started. And
Netscape. Wasn't it like Netscape or something? Or
it was Yahoo or
web crawler.
or something.
Yeah.
And somebody Googled it up, Ohio State, and we uncovered something. And when we told you we found that out, not that we were creeping on you, but it was just, we were just joking around.
Yeah.
We were busy in that binder. We're not going to bring that up.
No.
You're looking up at the binder. And we're like, dude, look at the internet. And somebody goes, hey, Z. Yeah. And I knew this, and we brought up, anyways, I'm keeping suspense, but you're talking about all these, Spielman and all these great players from Ohio State. You were Woody Hayes' pick, second all-time interior lineman.
Earl Bruce.
Earl Bruce. Was it Earl Bruce?
It was the all Earl era team. I was second.
Well, that's,
second
as my
team
kids would say, that's
D-line.
sick.
Yeah, so
If
it's
you
like
think of it, you're an
11
Ontario
years.
boy.
Yeah, 11 years worth. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And people don't realize how good of an interior lineman you were. And I'm just throwing that out because I know you're going to say, Bruno, this, come on, stop it. But you're mentioning all these great players, Doug Flutie, great actor, The Rock, who got his jersey never dirty, and all that kind of stuff. Sorry. But I'm just joking around. You know that. Doug Flutie, Darren Flutie, all these guys. And you were second all time in his books. So walk us through. How do you get, and this is why the sales part of it is that, how do you go from never doing sales really to being a top sales person? I'm sure you took some of that. Walk us through. You're a kid from Weston, Ontario.
Yep.
Immigrant family. Can't get more immigrant than where we came from. But
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think it was just simple, right? I was in high school. I wasn't sure what I was going to do after graduating. And quite frankly, I think my dad had plans that on Saturday nights I would play my accordion and make money in some of the restaurants and bars in downtown Toronto. And then in the meantime, my 9-to-5 job would have been working in the factory with him, right? At the Havilland Aircraft, right? And you sit there and I go, do I want to do that for the rest of my life? No. And I realized I was good at sports. I knew that, but I was like, I really started to take off in football. And I'm like, I'm starting to get the hang of this, like really starting to get the hang of this. And I'm loving it. And now I'm starting to fill out. I wasn't built like a pencil, right?
Yeah.
I started to fill out a little bit. And I realized that I could dominate some high school games, right? And I thought, I look on the wall of fame and I'm looking. I'm like, There's nobody besides maybe some guys who went in the NHL from my high school, but there's nobody from football, nobody
Right.
from basketball, right? And I thought, well, why not me? I love college football. I loved it since I was 5 years old. I remember seeing my first football game on TV, and I'm like, I love that equipment. I love the helmets, the face masks, like I was
Right.
raised a pacifist because my dad was always like, hey, we're immigrant, no, don't get in trouble, don't get in fights, don't be, aggressive, don't, turn the other cheek, walk away. It was always that mentality.
Yeah, we're
and sports,
meant to stay down here.
That's right. And sports allowed me to go, you mean I get to knock the crap out of that guy and I'm not going to get in trouble? Ding, light goes off, right? And now it's motivation, years of pent up frustration and anger, laying out on some poor. I worked with a kid at the CNE Stadium that.
Did you smash the
that one
accordion?
summer? No, I didn't.
No,
No, it's way too expensive.
Yeah.
But
Cool instrument.
There was a kid that went to Humberside, who's it wasn't even a rival school, but they were another school, and we had joined the two leagues that year, and he's like, yeah, we get to play you guys, and blah blah blah. And I'm a running back, and I'm this, and I'm like, well, I'm a D lineman at Weston, and And he starts talking some smack. And I said, well, we'll see what happens when the game comes, right? And my brother actually took it, because he was on the junior team, he actually has the picture of me when I caught this guy who I played with, or I worked with, and he had the ball like this, and I ended up on his back, and I took him to the ground. He lands on the ground, broke 2 of his ribs.
Oh my gosh.
He has a picture, and it's in my office, right? Can't remember the kid's name, but I remember I broke his ribs, not on purpose, but he landed on the ball, right? Like, what am I? And I realized just like, I can be on the giving end of this pain. Like, this is okay. I like this, right? And I just said, why not me, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, what am I going to lose? 100 stamps if I send out letters to 100 schools? Big deal. Who cares, right? So I sent out from the top schools right down to Div 3 and everything in between, and just said, let's see who comes back, right? And ironically enough, I actually had some interest from and responses back from Syracuse, from Notre Dame, from Maryland, from Ohio State, from Purdue, Illinois, and then a ton of Div 2 schools. But the reality was, I looked at it and I went, okay, well, you know what? How am I going to do this? I can go to like a Div 3 team and maybe be a really good player right off the bat, or I can test myself against the best. Div 1A, Big Ten. I grew up watching Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan never returned my letter, so the hell with them. And I went to Ohio State because of it. And I ended up being the first Canadian scholarship football player at Ohio State. And then the next year after me came Chris Boddy and Derek McCready. And Chris I played against at York. He was at York Memo at the time. And both great guys. And then I think it was 2 years after that, my brother and 2 of his teammates get Div 1A scholarships out of Weston. And
But your brother played at
Maryland.
Maryland, yeah.
And then the year after that, Ray Biggs, who also played here in Calgary, transferred from York Memo to, from George Harvey to Weston to play football because we had the exposure, and he went down to New Mexico State. So, it was the ability to just say, you know what, I'm going to blast it. I'll tread the path. I'll make the path through the forest here.
Yeah.
Follow me, right? Because no one else really had the courage to say, why not me, right? And that's how I got there.
It's amazing because, and I really mean it's amazing. We joke around quite a bit, and I'm very fortunate to have you as a friend. But the big but is that I know exactly what you're talking about because I was way too undersized to even smell Penn State University because at the time, we don't even name the linebacker coach, but he was legendary. Wouldn't even look at anybody under 6'4". Those were the Jack Ham days. And, well, I'm a lot younger than Jack, but I'm just saying.
Matt Mill and Pete Giftopoulos, right?
He's a Toronto kid, too.
Yeah.
Not a chance. And one of my mentors was Conrad Holloway. I don't know if you remember Conrad.
Yep.
And way too late. And I'm not even flattering myself for being a baseball player, but true baseball player. But I could never imagine growing up that a kid from, my case in Ottawa, inner city kid, immigrant kid, could even play for the Yankees, a Canadian kid. And it wasn't until later that Conrad said, I was way too late. And he said, you're never going to play linebacker at Penn State, so you may as well give up, not give up that dream. He wasn't that dream, But the thing is that I think that's what people like you maybe instill in kids coming in, like your daughter and your son. And I remember talking about that. It's like, gee whiz, this is where I missed the boat. My kids asked me if I can share this story. My kids asked me once, we were playing just down the street from your place. They were playing Little League baseball. And, I cranked one, I don't know, 300 feet or something like that at the time. And, they were 10 or 11 and they're talking. I said, Dad, how come you can still hit it at, 100 years old? Why didn't you play for the Yankees? That's a tough question to answer for your kids because you want to say, you never give up and try this, try that. And I took a day to answer that question. I just said, I didn't know I could. I didn't know how. Work, you got to do this, you got to do that. And believe it or not, it was like, notwithstanding talent and size and everything like that, I don't even know. But it was never a goal until you kind of figure out, why not me? And I remember you telling us that story when I first met you and finding out you were second team, not second overall. And I'm thinking, man, I'm never going to let my kids think that you're not going to be able to do it. And one of my sons too, Dominic, and I told him to do the exact same thing you did in the era of the internet. Forget about that. Go to the schools, talk to them, go to the combines. And so, that was very inspirational. I've never told you that, but it was part and parcel of the story of the kid from Weston and going to Ohio. Like growing up, I can never even ever imagine that.
Why not? And you look at how
What did your parents say?
Oh, they didn't know anything about. Why are you playing football? You get hurt. Like my dad actually made me try and quit football twice, and I just told him at the end. I said, you know what? If you make me quit this game that I'm hooked on it. Like I found something I'm just super passionate about. You're gonna make me quit this game. I'm probably gonna hate you for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right? Because I also recognize, as I tell my kids, you only have a window of opportunity in your youth here. And the longer you wait, the smaller the window gets and the harder it is to get in. So you need to, once you associate that you have the ability and the talent, do you have the drive? That becomes the next component, right? Opportunities will come if you have those things, right? And the same happened for my daughter right now. So I'm super happy for her, but she found that out early, right? And once you find that out, it's like, what's holding? It's going to take a whole bunch of coaches saying no before I give up on it, right? And the reality
I know we got to get to the second point, and you know how wired I am about coaching and philosophies of coaching, good or bad. Okay, for those who dislike me, that's probably the biggest killer in kids getting to the next level is coaches that have no business saying you can't make it.
Yep.
Right? We've had this discussion many times. We're going to get to point 2 on your sales thing, but you just hit on that, is that the coaches who have no business, who've never even tried to make Ohio State or Penn State or University of Ottawa or anything like that, and saying, I don't think you're good enough, or you don't. What do you say to people like that?
Well, I don't think it's good for kids to hear that. Like, there's all kinds of statistics about, by the time kids get to be 5 years old, how many times they've heard the word no, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is, I love the philosophy of, you don't win or lose. You win or you learn. And it takes a lot of getting knocked down on your butt and your nose bloodied before you figure out, this is what I was missing. And then when you figure it out, bang, it's a win. Then the next one's a win. And you're like, okay, awesome. Until competition throws out another curveball that I haven't seen before. Then I'm going to get knocked down again, but I'm going to learn, right? And it's a constant evolution, right? And it really is no different in business, right? Like you could be successful at doing, A, B, and C's, but now you look at the year we had in 2020 and COVID. I'll tell you what, if you're not flexible and you don't have the ability to stop, drop, and roll, as they say, right? Because the situation's completely changed and you're used to like, well, I've got to do A, then B, then C. You're done. You've got to adapt, right? Improvise, adapt, and overcome, right? Sergeant Gunny Highway, right? Clint Eastwood, right? So, there's always great sayings, and the reason why they are great sayings is because they're tried and true, right? So I really do believe that, you have to have that ability to always be flexible enough to change at a moment's notice, right? In a game, my offensive strategy is getting killed by the team across the field. Do I just keep going with it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do I go, hold on a second, what are we seeing out there? What are they doing that we didn't expect? And how do we counteract that? Oh, next time that guy blitz, see it, play like you don't see it, but we're going to run this play.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And bang, it's gone for a touchdown, right? And so it's that mentality of, as my dad calls football, human chess, right? And it is. It's what's my ultimate move. I know what it is, but it may take 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves to get there.
Right.
Right? But if he does this, oh, well, now it's become 5 moves. That's okay, right? And you improvise and adapt and you figure it out, right?
Well, if we go back to the second reason, second top thing, what would it be? Because I want to tie that into your this. We've been talking for a little bit, but
great sports talk.
It all ties in to that because you never gave up.
No, and my second point is for ultimately for closing more deals is you got to work for your customer. I've had the philosophy, and I think maybe some managers don't agree with it or haven't agreed with it in the past. It is what it is, but it's the mindset that I have to have for myself, and that is that I'm working for my customer, right? And I've often said, this company, yeah, I get it. My paycheck has your logo on it, but I've got to work for my customer. I'm the liaison that gets revenue in the door from these guys. So I really have to work hard for them. I understand the philosophy and the strategy of my company and who I work for, but I have to work hard and work diligently for my customers to say, what's next? Can I anticipate something for you, right? Where are you heading in strategy, right? It was one of the things that I enjoyed, especially when I worked with companies like Suncor and Devon and Husky, right? Was I got to the level where I was talking to individuals that would share with me and say, hey, you know what? Well, over the next 3 years, I got to hire 300 people. And well, what are your plans? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do, right? Like, what's the expectation? Oh, where's the load? Where can I help you, right? What tools can the company I'm working with, what can we work on to develop something, right? And I've got, a handful of really great success stories that happened. And I've often said the best conversations I've had with customers have been the ones where they look at you and they go, do you guys have, and then it doesn't matter what's after that, right? Yeah. Because now we're talking at a higher level, we're talking some strategy, we're talking potentially some new business, we're talking a new revenue stream, you know what I mean? Like now we're getting off the, flip to page 38 in your catalog and I want that in blue.
Right.
Now it's provide for me a solution, right? Like in the first segment that we did, right? Sell me a solution. Be my problem solver. Don't just sell me X for Y amount of money, right? But solve my problems for me. And now I become, a trusted advisor, which is kind of the highest role that you can get to. Because that's the person that when he has his internal meetings, might invite me or my team or my technical guys in to sit with them and go, what do you think? And when you have that conglomeration of brain power, that's when you just go, wow, you know what? We really walked away with this meeting with some really great ideas. What are the action items? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? You know what I mean? And it creates energy and then out it goes, right? But it always starts with, hey, do you guys have, and then it doesn't matter what it is, right? But those are the best meetings, right? Because it just kicks off great things. In my mind.
And the reason why we kind of we spoke about Ohio State and all this stuff is that it's the same as closing the deal. And you know what? If you don't try and you don't get to that what if, do you guys have, do you think I can make it? And that's why I'm against all those coaches or those young coaches or lower level coaches that say it can't be. Let me ask the question. Let me figure it out. Yeah. But how, right now you help companies get to the next level, salespeople, and if you click down here, you can get in touch with Srecko, and that's kind of what you're doing right now. You're helping companies get to the next level in your new gig. So what can they expect when they do get in touch with you and say, hey, Shrek, can you come over to our organization on the sales side?
I think it's about relationships, right? That's always been key for me, right? Like, you and I have talked a little bit about this before, but every single job I've ever gotten, for the exception of the CFL, has been because of a relationship that I had with somebody that just said, hey, trust the integrity, trust the honesty of this guy, trust the work effort, the work ethic, and the effort that this guy's going to give you. I think that has always been kind of the reputation that's followed me.
Right.
And it's always done well. And in a city like Calgary, where, for the energy industry, I mean, it's 7 square blocks. That's it, right? And if you're not there, you might not be, a huge player. Now, nowadays, though, I take that back, because given what COVID's forced a lot of people to do to work from home and stuff, so that, the employees have kind of dispersed back into the suburbs and some other stuff, but there's a lot of less face-to-face. Business still happens. We just do it on a different way, whether it's a Zoom call or, FaceTime or just even a phone call, right? But it's having that relationship and being able to create a bond with your customer. That's really the key. And ultimately, it's no different than any other sales gig. It's, what's your book look like? Who do you know?
Right.
Right. Where can you get me a conversation with? And that's the important thing. So it's always being able to stay on top of, customers and where they are, what they're doing, their contact information, just even reaching out, even if I got nothing to sell them, right? But just say, hey, just calling to say hello. I was in the neighborhood, or I parked around the corner, thought, hey, what the hell? Pop on up here, see you in the office, just say hello. How the kids doing, right? Know a little bit about your customer, right? I think it's important that customers feel like you care about them, right?
So yeah, you guys click on below down here if you want to get in touch with Z. Z or me, we'll get you Z's information, and you'd be great for working out with a whole bunch of. I know I learned a crap load from you, so I did. Not the accordion. We'll talk about the accordion later. I love the accordion, squeeze box. All right, so thanks for those 2 tips.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Well, you know what? That's pretty much all the time we have for this episode today. Thank you for tuning in with us. And you know what? Make sure you subscribe to our MegaPixx media channel so you will never miss an episode. And also, you can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram. We have content almost every day. So thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you guys soon.